weather at Umi Nami Farm. As you can tell, I'm not outside right now. I am inside the farmhouse at the farm office. And we thought we would start here today and do something a little bit different. We are in the middle of a cold snap right now. It's been the mildest winter we have ever seen, but we are in the middle of a cold snap right now. And I would like to talk about one aspect of preparation for cold weather, which is forecast tracking. Now, the method I'm about to show you is not my method. This is a method developed by Yoshiko, who's the farm owner who manages the box program. You might also know her as Uno-san. And what she basically does is every morning she checks the Environment Canada weather forecast for Victoria. There's not really a Environment Canada weather station right near us in Metchosin, so we just go with the one for the Victoria Airport. And then we adjust, as I'm going to show in a minute. So we look here. Now, there's a lot of information we can get here. One is, the first thing you might look at is what are the daytime temperatures. But what we're most interested in is two things. One is the nighttime temperatures, because that's when we're going to get our really coldest conditions. The other thing we're looking at is what's the sky doing overnight. If it's overcast, we don't expect as low a temperature as if it's a clear night. And so what we do then is, what she does on the spreadsheet here is, I don't know if you can read the handwriting, but across here we've got the date on which the forecast is checked. And then there'll be the daytime temperature, the nighttime low, the daytime temperature, the nighttime low. And then the blue highlighting reflects days where nights, where we expect to have a clear sky and therefore colder conditions. What we can do by this is to get an idea over several days, what trend do we see in the forecast? Because sometimes the 7-day forecast might, for example, like today's forecast says over here, they're saying we're going to get -4. That's a lot scarier than saying we're going to get -2. But the thing is, how stable is that forecast? If every single day the forecasters are predicting the same thing, then we know we have to take that really seriously. If we see a -4 or a -5 in the 7-day forecast, but then they keep changing the forecast and updating it with warmer and warmer predictions, we're kind of like, we'll still be careful, but we don't need to put as much effort into protection as we would if that forecast stuck around. And when I say stick around, what I mean is you can read down the column and see how, okay, this day, 0, 1, 1, it's pretty similar. If you go somewhere, say out here, where's a good example? Here we had -3, -3, -4, -2 being forecasted. We don't know what it's going to do yet because we haven't gotten there yet, but we're tracking that to see kind of overall what picture are the forecasters giving us. And then what we can do is at the bottom of the sheet, we can track the actual overnight low and the actual daytime high, and then we compare that to what the forecast was telling us. And so, for example, if the forecast is telling us that it might be a -4 overnight at the airport, we're like, it could go as low as like -6 or worse here kind of a thing. So we better be really careful. That would mean say two layers of remay on the greens, make sure to cover up the potato storage, make sure to cover up our stored apples, any other storage crops would get covered up. Whereas if they're predicting a -1 overnight, yeah, well, sure, we might put some remay on the tenderest greens, but we're not going to go to the ends of the world trying to protect all the crops because that's not probably going to be so bad, especially if it's a cloudy night. But basically what we're doing is we're taking into account how is the forecast staying the same or changing from day to day in terms of the temperature. We're also looking at the cloud versus sun conditions so that we can get an idea of what the sky might be doing. And then, like I said, if it's going to be a clear night, we expect a much harder frost than if it's going to be overcast. So right now we are certainly on high alert because a few days ago we did have a -5 predicted somewhere in here. They're downgrading it now to like -3s and -4s, which is not as bad, but is still not great. We're also looking at the fact that Sunday, Monday, where we have a chance of flurries. Previously, they were predicting snow. So it's hard to say, is this going to be like light flurries? Is this going to be an actual snowfall? Where that becomes important for us is Monday is a big harvest day for us. If there's a big snowfall and workers can't get into the farm because of road conditions, then we might not be able to get the harvest done for Wednesday. So this weekend, just in case Monday turns out to be a snow day, we're harvesting some things in advance, just so that we can make sure to have vegetables for the Wednesday box program. So there's lots to keep track of. Certainly keeps us on our toes, but why don't we go outside and take a look at how things are going out there. So our last video was November 30th. We're here today on February 1st. I commented in the last video how we had just recently entered the dark quarter of the year. We are just about to exit the dark quarter of the year. This coming week, the 4th or the 5th or so, will be that midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. It's called Rishun in Japanese, and many cultures and many languages have had names of various kinds for this point in the year. So we are getting ready to exit the dark quarter. Right now, the greens are still growing slowly with the lack of light. We anticipate that speeding up soon, but for the time being, we've still got some fairly slow growth. But what I can show you is that the same place we were in the last video talking about the greens we'd transplanted, they're now at either a harvestable stage or nearly a harvestable stage. So let's take a quick look. So here we've got our Mizuna, red Mizuna, and some mustard greens here. This is a different kind of green Mizuna, basically. These would have been sown on the seed tray back October 30th, actually. Transplanted November 27th. And they're only just now, early February, getting ready for harvest. So you can see just how slowly things tend to grow during the winter versus the summer, when the same seeds could be ready for harvest in maybe 6 weeks, kind of a thing. The komatsuna here similarly is a little bit younger. It was sowed on November 11th, transplanted on December 19th. And we have already been harvesting this one. Komatsuna tends to grow a little bit more quickly than some of the others, basically. But we anticipate that we'll very soon be finished harvesting here. We have just recently planted snow peas and snap peas on the seed trays and placed those on a hotbed to get them to germinate. This is one of the places where we're planning to transplant them. So as soon as we've got the crops out of here, we'll prepare the soil and get ready for the snow peas and snap peas, which probably won't be ready until later in the spring, like April kind of a thing, maybe somewhere in there. But yeah, the wheels are turning to get the next season going already. In the meantime, with the cold weather, we have hoops on here. At night, we are covering a layer of rime. I spoke earlier about how we were, anticipating there could be some really cold weather early next week. So for the time being, we're just doing a single layer, but if the forecast does look really rough, like -4, -5 or worse, we might go ahead and put a double layer on instead, just to really make sure we don't lose these guys. Ironically, they're more susceptible to frost when they're older. The little young ones that we just transplant, they don't need any protection at all, they're fine. But these guys do need protection, and so we'll be making sure to monitor carefully and keep these ones good for selling. Right now, we're actually coming up on a very challenging season of the year. I just finished talking about how the greens are growing very slowly still. We don't really have that much greens right now, just because the weather has been a bit cooler and things have slowed down. We're also sort of getting to the end of some of the crops that we planted last fall for winter harvest. For example, the cabbages are almost finished. This greenhouse is not exactly picture perfect, but I wanted to show you the haksai or napa cabbage. Right now, what's happening is a lot of them have decided to go to flower. And so instead of forming a nice head, what we have instead is these flower stalks. And if the flower stalks look nice, we will often just kind of break them off here, and then we can sell them as brassica florets. But that's a lot less food than a big cabbage head kind of a thing. So in our last video, we showed you these beautiful, amazing carrots we were getting outside. Well, this is that field. The carrots, we finished harvesting them back in December. And since then, the conditions have actually been very dry this winter. And so I was recently able to fertilize and till this field in preparation for sowing potatoes later on in the spring. Now, we have covered it up with this plastic tarp just because even though it's been a dry year, we are still in the rainy season. And both in terms of regulation and in terms of just plain ecological ethics, we shouldn't be letting the rain fall on a recently fertilized field and then wash nutrients down into the groundwater and stuff like this. And so we've covered it with the plastic just to keep the rain off it. But I'm going to show you underneath. So basically what we've done is we've sprinkled this soybean pulp that we get from the tofu factory. And then also some assorted leaves from, various crops and stuff like this, just to give a little bit of extra organic matter. It doesn't look like it on the side here, but you can kind of tell a bit more underneath how I went through and I tilled lightly with a rototiller just to kind of mix the okra with the soil a bit. I didn't want to till heavily just because it was still a little on the wet side, and so you still do see a lot of it on the surface. But we're very hopeful that we'll get what normally happens, which is that, as unnatural as the plastic may be, the worms are very happy underneath. And so they typically go through, digest all those leaves, all that okra, everything. And then when we pull this off, what we typically see is just like a really nice, well composted, dark, clean soil, basically. We'll see how that goes. We'll probably have to till it again before we plant potatoes, but like I said, just giving it a light tilling now since it's still a little bit wet, and then till it again when it's a bit drier. We are in the middle of crop planting right now, and so there's this whole Tetris thing of which crop's going to go where, which soil needs to be prepared next, is it ready to prepare, is the other crop finished? It's a great big puzzle that we have to work with every year, but it's actually really fun at this time of year to try to figure those things out and just look ahead to the season to come. So today we've talked a lot about the cold, but it has still been the mildest winter that I've ever seen and that anyone I can talk to farming around here has ever seen. This is really unheard of, that at the beginning of February, we would not only still have daikon on the field, but have daikon with green leaves still in the field. This is very beautiful, but just very strange to actually be able to sell daikon with fresh leaves at this time of year. That being said, you can't keep daikon in the field indefinitely, no matter how mild the weather is. At some point, whether it's the temperature or the change in daylight, they start to sense that spring is on the way, and they start to want to make seeds. And so what you actually see here is these guys are starting to make flower shoots. You can see this like little kind of broccoli type floret kind of a thing here. These guys are getting ready to make flowers. And when they do that, they're moving nutrients out of their root and up into that flower stem. And that tends to change the eating quality of the root, so it's not going to be as good anymore. So what we did with this field here is we went through and we harvested all the ones that aren't flowering and we put them in storage. Partly to get them before they do go to flower, partly to get them before we get any colder weather kind of a thing. And then these guys that are going to flower, we'll probably just leave them here for the time being. Might come through and harvest the flower shoots or something like that. But these guys are basically kind of done. Speaking of mild, look at this. Here we've got a little prunella flowering here, right at the beginning of February. The gorse bushes and some of the broom nearby have been flowering as well. So you can really tell that, nature's feeling the odd temperatures. It's going to be interesting to see how that mildness of the winter interacts with cold temperatures, if that will kind of like really hammer the plants hard or they'll pull through fine. We'll see how that goes. But I think this is part of what keeps farming interesting, is that no 2 years are ever exactly alike. No 2 seasons are ever exactly alike. And we always have to be paying attention. How do we adjust to changing conditions? We'll see what happens, but we look forward to keep on sharing it with you as time goes by. So thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to see you next time. Bye now.